God's word is like a raging fire in my heart, shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. I cannot. That's Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9. Most people picture prophets as confident, thundering figures. Jeremiah was none of those things. He wept. He cursed the day he was born. He accused God of ruining his life, and yet he couldn't stop. To understand this fire, we need to understand the man and the world that was burning around him. Jeremiah prophesied during the final decades of the kingdom of Judah, roughly 627 to 586 BCE. Babylon was rising, Jerusalem was doomed, and Jeremiah's job was to say so publicly, repeatedly, to people who considered him a traitor. Unlike any other prophet in the Hebrew Bible, Jeremiah left behind deeply personal laments scattered across his book. Scholars call these the confessions of Jeremiah, not confessions of sin, but raw outpourings of anguish directed at God. They appear in chapters 11, 12, 15, 17, 18, and 20. The emotional arc of these confessions is devastating. In chapters 8 and 9, Jeremiah weeps over Jerusalem's coming destruction. By chapter 15, he tells God his word has brought him nothing but isolation and pain. Then comes chapter 20, the climax. Jeremiah accuses God of enticing him, of overpowering him. He says, I resolved to stop prophesying, to never speak in God's name again. But the word was like fire shut up in my bones. I could not hold it in. And then, in the very next verses, he curses the day he was born. This is not triumphant authority. This is agonized obedience. No other prophet exposes this kind of inner turmoil. Isaiah, Amos, Hosea, they deliver God's message, but they never show us the cost of carrying it. Jeremiah does. But how do we even have these words? Jeremiah couldn't walk freely in Jerusalem. Chapter 36 tells us, around 605 BCE, God commands Jeremiah to write down everything he has ever prophesied onto a single scroll. Jeremiah is barred from the temple, so he dictates the words to his scribe, a man named Baruch ben Neriah, an amanuensis, a professional secretary. Baruch writes it all down, then reads the scroll publicly at the temple. Officials hear it and report to King Jehoiakim. The king's response is extraordinary. As each column of the scroll is read aloud, Jehoiakim takes a knife, cuts off the column, and throws it into the fire. Column by column, the entire scroll burns. But the story doesn't end there. God orders Jeremiah to dictate a second scroll, and this time the text says, many similar words were added. The second scroll is longer than the first. This episode shatters a common assumption that prophetic texts are transcripts of street preaching. They're not. Chapter 36 shows a deliberate literary process. Jeremiah dictated from memory. Baruch composed a written document. That document was destroyed, and the replacement was expanded. It contained more material than the original. This is authorial and editorial work. The scroll episode is a microcosm of something much larger. The entire book of Jeremiah was built this way. Scholars identify three distinct layers of material in the book of Jeremiah. The first layer, poetic oracles, Jeremiah's own words, vivid poetry full of metaphor and emotion. The second layer, biographical narratives written in prose describing events in Jeremiah's life. These are widely attributed to Baruch. The third layer, Deuteronomistic editing. Deuteronomistic means written in the theological style and vocabulary of the book of Deuteronomy, a distinct editorial tradition that shaped much of the Hebrew Bible's historical writing. These editors added sermons, theological frameworks, and connecting material. The book we read today is not a single author document. It's a compass work assembled across generations, the prophet's voice, his scribe's pen, and the later editor's theology, woven together. The evidence for this layered composition is concrete. The Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible made around the 3rd century BCE, contains a version of Jeremiah that is roughly 1/8 shorter than the Hebrew Masoretic text. The arrangement is different too. In the Hebrew text, oracles against foreign nations appear at the end, chapters 46 through 51. In the Septuagint, they appear in the middle, right after chapter 25. The Dead Sea Scroll fragments confirm both versions circulated simultaneously. There was no single original. The book was an open, evolving composition. So we have a literary trail, 3 layers of material, 2 major textual traditions, Dead Sea Scroll fragments confirming both. But is there a physical trail? Can we touch anything connected to the people who made this book? The answer is yes. And it comes in a lump of clay the size of a thumbnail. A bulla is a lump of clay pressed onto the string binding of a papyrus scroll to seal it, like a wax seal on a letter. In 1975, scholars identified a bulla inscribed in ancient Hebrew, belonging to Baruch, son of Neriyahu, the scribe. Baruch is the full form of Baruch. Neriyahu is Neriah, the scribe, the same title the Bible gives him. Same name, same father's name, same profession. Then in 1996, a second bulla surfaced on the antiquities market. Not from a controlled excavation, which raises provenance concerns. Provenance means the documented origin of an archaeological find. And the second bulla bears the same inscription and one extraordinary addition, a fingerprint pressed into the clay, possibly the physical imprint of a person named in the Bible. A fingerprint on clay, fire in the bones. These 2 images frame the entire story of how a prophetic book was born. The confessions show us that prophecy was not a comfortable divine gift. It was compulsion, a force that destroyed Jeremiah's social life and inner peace. He tried to stop and physically could not. The scroll episode and the bulla show us that transmission was equally complex. Dictation, memorization, destruction, recomposition, editorial expansion across centuries and multiple textual traditions circulating at the same time. Jeremiah's book is not a transcript. It's a layered literary monument built by the prophet, his scribe, and generations of editors. Poetic oracles from a man who couldn't stop speaking. Prose narratives from the scribe who wrote it all down and whose name survives on a piece of clay. Editorial frameworks from theologians who shaped the material for new audiences across centuries. The Septuagint preserves one version, the Hebrew text preserves another. The Dead Sea Scrolls confirm both existed side by side. Somewhere between the fire in Jeremiah's bones and the clay under Baruch's thumb, a prophetic book was born, not in a single moment of inspiration, but through a long, painful, deeply human process of writing, losing, and rewriting.